The unwanted partner. The jungle air was thick and hot, full of strange smells and buzzing alien insects. Human soldier Jace stepped out of the dropship and looked around. Giant blue trees, twisting vines, and glowing plants surrounded him. He took a deep breath and adjusted his gear. This place was not Earth. It was Zarnak 7, a deadly alien training world. "Move faster, human," came a cold voice behind him. Jace turned and saw her, Kazira. She was tall, strong, and clearly not human. Her skin was a deep silver blue, and her eyes were sharp like a blade. She wore golden armor and her long tail flicked side to side. She was an elite warrior from the Zarnak Empire, and now she was his partner, not by choice. Jace had been assigned to this mission by the Galactic Alliance. It was supposed to build trust between species. One human and one Zarnak warrior were dropped into a jungle survival simulation for 7 days. They had to survive together as a team, but from the moment Kazira saw him, she didn't like him. "You look soft," she said, walking past him. "Are all humans like you?" Jace said nothing. He had learned long ago that words didn't matter to warriors like her. Only actions did. They moved deeper into the jungle. Kazira walked in front, confident and proud. Jace followed quietly, scanning the trees. He had read reports that the jungle wasn't fully safe. Some creatures here weren't simulations. They were real. After 2 hours of walking, they reached a clearing. Kazira threw down her pack and said, "We rest here. I will hunt. You set up the camp." "That is a human job, yes?" Jace stared at her. "We're supposed to work as a team." "I don't take orders from prey," she said with a smile. Jace clenched his jaw. Still, he began setting up a small camp. He gathered dry wood, set up a shelter, and kept an eye on their surroundings. Kazira disappeared into the trees. When she returned, she threw a dead lizard-like creature on the ground. "See? Easy for Hazarnak. You would have cried." "I've seen worse," Jace replied calmly. That night, they sat around the fire. The jungle sounds grew louder. Screeches, howls, and hissing filled the air. Jace stayed alert. But Kazira kept smirking. "You're afraid, aren't you?" she asked. "It's okay. Humans are weak, it's in your nature." "I'm not afraid," Jace replied. "I'm careful." Kazira leaned closer, poked his shoulder, and said in a teasing voice, "Careful, like a rabbit hiding from a hawk." Jace didn't respond. She kept poking him again and again. The other alien soldiers, watching their mission from orbit, laughed on the live feed. They thought it was funny, a strong alien woman bullying a quiet human. But Jace wasn't weak. He was patient. The next morning, Kazira kicked his sleeping bag. "Wake up, slow creature, you move like a snail." Jace got up, silent and steady. He packed their supplies and followed her into the jungle. She walked ahead, slicing through vines with her clawed gauntlet. Every now and then, she would toss a leaf or a bug at Jace, just to annoy him. "Why don't you ever fight back?" she asked suddenly. "Because I don't need to," Jace said. Kazira laughed loudly. "You're a strange one." They reached a high ridge. Below them, a strange fog was rolling in. Kazira looked excited. "Let's go through it." Jace frowned. The fog zone wasn't marked safe. "Are you scared again?" "No," Jace replied. "I'm not stupid." Kazira ignored him and slid down the hill. Jace followed, but he kept his hand on his blaster. Something was wrong. The fog was too thick, it made his sensors glitch, and the air smelled like metal and blood. Suddenly a sound came from the mist, a deep growl, then another. Shapes moved in the fog, large and fast. "Kazira, we're not alone," Jace shouted. She drew her twin blades and smiled. "Good, I was getting bored." 2 creatures leapt from the fog, giant beasts with black skin and long claws. Jace fired his blaster, hitting one in the leg. Kazira jumped at the other, slicing into its chest. For a moment it looked like they might win, but more creatures came. 5, 10. They surrounded them. Jace moved beside Kazira. "Back to back. We can't run." You finally want to fight? She asked. No, he said, aiming his blaster. I want to survive. The jungle of death. The fog didn't move like normal mist. It twisted and spun on its own like it was alive. It didn't. Just blocked the view, it swallowed it. 1 second, Jay saw Kazira beside him, and the next she was gone. Kazira? He called out, holding his blaster tight. No answer. Then the jungle growled. It wasn't the beast from before. This sound came from deep underground. The earth shook softly, and the air turned heavy like something ancient had woken up. Jay stepped carefully. The trees were glowing faint green now. They had long roots that curled like snakes across the floor. He activated his scanner, but the signal jammed. Nothing worked. Suddenly, something darted across the fog, fast and low. Not a beast. Not a shadow. A figure. Something was watching him, and still no sign of Kazira. He pressed a button on his wrist to activate the emergency beacon. It blinked red. Signal blocked. Then he heard it. Laughter. Not Kazira's. This laugh was strange. Broken, like it had too many voices inside it. A chill ran down his spine. The laughter grew louder, all around him. He wasn't alone. Then just as fast it stopped, and Kazira's voice broke through. Human! Up here! Jace looked up. She was on top of a giant twisted root, standing like a queen, her blade soaked in green slime. Two strange creatures lay below her, dead. But they didn't look like the beasts from before. They looked almost human. Climbers, she said. They wore human skin. Disgusting shapeshifters. Jace climbed up beside her, panting. You fought them alone? I waited for you, she said with a smirk. But you were too slow. He didn't answer. He studied the creatures. Their skin was stretched tight, as if it didn't belong to them. Their mouths were stitched with thorns. It was like something forced them to wear faces. Kazira flicked green blood off her blade. This jungle is no simulation. I knew it. Why didn't you say anything earlier? Jace asked. Because I wanted to see how long you'd last, she said. Now I know. You wanted me to die? No. I wanted to see if you'd fight when it mattered. Jace didn't trust her words, but he had to trust her blades. She was fast, dangerous, and now even more alert than before. We need shelter, he said. And high ground. Kazira pointed to a black mountain in the distance. It rose above the trees, glowing red at the top. There. Old Zarnak ruins. It's sacred. My ancestors built it. Jace frowned. I thought Zarnaks believed humans shouldn't walk on sacred ground. I also thought humans were weak, she said. Now I'm not so sure. They started moving through the jungle again, this time side by side. Every step brought new dangers, plants with teeth, rocks that screamed. Once a river turned to acid as they stepped too close, and Kazira pulled him back just in time. Still, she kept teasing him. You flinched again. I saw acid. I think flinching was the right move. You think too much, she said, and gently tapped his helmet again. He grabbed her wrist before she pulled it away. Her eyes narrowed. Jace looked straight at her. Do that again and I'll bite. She blinked, then smiled. Good. You're finally learning. They reached a clearing where strange alien statues stood, half buried in vines. The statues had faces like Kazira's, but twisted in pain. Ancient writing glowed on the stone. What is this place? Jace asked. Burial ground, Kazira said, suddenly serious. My people come here to bury the dead who die without honor. Jace touched one statue. The stone was warm. A low hum came from inside. Then the vines moved, not like wind, like fingers. The vines wrapped around Jace's leg, then his arm, fast. He tried to shoot, but his arm was pinned. Don't struggle, Kazira shouted, but it was too late. The vines yanked him into the air. More vines came, grabbing his neck, his waist pulling tighter and tighter. Kazira jumped, slashing vines as she leapt upward. She cut one, then two, then five, but more kept coming. The jungle wanted to keep its prey. Jace's vision started to go black. And then, he felt it, her claws digging into his back as she climbed up him, blade in her mouth. She sliced the final vine, and they both crashed to the ground. He coughed, rolling over. Kazira stood over him, panting. "You still alive, human?" "Barely." "Good," she said, offering her hand. "Then we keep going." He looked at her, and for the first time took her hand. The air was still, too still. After the battle with the vines, Jace and Kazira found shelter in a small stone ruin hidden beneath giant roots. The structure looked old, maybe thousands of years, but it was dry and safe. Moss covered the broken walls, and faint, blue crystals glowed inside, giving off just enough light. Jace sat down slowly, rubbing his bruised arms. His shirt was torn and his gear was half damaged. Kazira stood near the entrance, watching the jungle with her sharp silver eyes. Neither of them spoke for a while. Outside, the jungle hissed and whispered. Inside, silence. Then Kazira turned and walked toward Jace. She didn't look angry. She looked curious. "You fought better today," she said flatly. Jace gave a small nod. "Didn't want to die yet." She sat down across from him, closer than before. Her tail curled behind her like a serpent resting. "You still think this is just a training mission?" she asked. "I think someone sent us here to test more than our survival skills." She smiled slightly. "Finally, you think like a warrior." Jace looked at her hand. It had a small cut from the vine blades. He opened a med kit and reached toward her. She pulled back fast. "Don't touch me. It's just a healing patch." "I don't care. I'm not your pet." Jace froze. "I never said you were." Kazira leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Then why do you keep looking at me like I'm some helpless girl?" "I don't," Jace said, voice calm. "But I am tired of you poking me like I'm your pet." That made her laugh, a low, musical sound. "You finally show teeth." "Good." She poked his chest with a claw again. Not hard, but just enough to make a point. That's when he moved. Fast, he grabbed her wrist. She tensed, surprised, but not afraid. Then, before she could react, he bit her, right on the hand, not to hurt, but to warn. Kazira didn't pull away. Her eyes widened, glowing brighter. Her breathing slowed. She looked down at the bite mark, then up at Jace's face. Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was charged. "You bit me?" she asked softly. "Yes." She leaned closer. "No human has ever done that to me," she whispered, "not even in battle. I'm not like other humans." Her face was unreadable. A warrior. A killer. But now something else flickered in her expression. Something strange. Interest? Respect? Even desire? She didn't pull her hand away. Instead, she raised it, looked at the bite, and smiled. "In my culture," she said, "a bite like that, it means a challenge, a fight for dominance." Jace didn't flinch. "Then let's call it even." Kazira stood and walked a few steps away, then turned sharply. "You might think it was a warning, but to me, it was something else." He stood too. "What do you mean?" She stepped close again. "You didn't bite to kill. You bit to claim." "That's not what I—" "It doesn't matter what you meant," she interrupted. "It matters what they will think." "Who?" Kazira pointed up at the sky. "The ones watching." Jace looked up. Somewhere in orbit, the Zarnak Council and Alliance officers were observing their every move. If Kazira was right, then his action might have just broken several interspecies laws. "They'll think you tried to dominate a Zarnak noble," she said. "So what now?" Jace asked. She leaned in close, voice low. "Now, they'll expect us to finish what we started." He stared into her alien eyes. "You want to fight?" "No," she said, voice softer. "I want to see how far you'll go." Suddenly a loud crash shook the ground. The wall beside them cracked open. From it, long spider-like legs crawled through, a creature made of bone and black smoke. It shrieked, sensing life. Jace and Kazira jumped into action. She grabbed her blades. He drew his blaster. Side by side they fought. Fast, brutal, perfect timing. No words needed. When the beast was dead, they stood over its body, breathing hard. Kazira looked at him, and for the first time, she said it without sarcasm. "You're not weak." Jace didn't smile, he just said, "Neither are you." They sat down again as the night grew darker, and the bite on her hand glowed faintly. Unexpected reactions. The night was quiet, but not peaceful. Smoke still rose from the body of the bone creature they had killed. Strange black liquid oozed from its wounds and hissed against the stone floor. Kazira sat near the glowing crystals, her hand resting gently on the bite mark Jace had left. She hadn't wrapped it. She hadn't cleaned it. She wanted the mark to stay. Jace kept his distance, pretending to clean his weapon. But his mind was not on the blaster. It was on her. On that moment. On what it meant. "I expected you to attack me," Kazira finally said, her voice softer than ever before. "I did," Jace replied without looking up. "No," she said. "You challenged me, but you didn't strike to harm. You struck to warn. That is rare." Jace looked up at her. "Where I'm from, we don't waste strength on proving things. We use it to protect what matters." She studied him for a long moment, then stood. "I need air." She stepped outside into the jungle clearing. The glowing plants moved as she passed, bending slightly as if respecting her presence. The jungle, once hostile, now seemed to watch her with curiosity. Jace followed quietly, stopping beside her. Above them, twin moons cast silver light through the trees. "This world," she said, "was once a sacred trial ground. Long ago, my people sent their warriors here to face the wild alone. If they survived, they earned honor. If they failed, the jungle claimed them. So it's not just a test, it's a ritual," Jace said. "Yes," she replied. "But this time, something's wrong. The jungle is darker, hungrier. It shouldn't have those shadow creatures, or the shapeshifters. You think someone changed the trial? I think someone wants us dead." Jace stared at her. "Then why save me earlier?" Kazira looked over her shoulder. "Because you bit me, and in my culture that means you are now mine." Jace raised a brow. "Excuse me?" She smirked. "Not like a toy, like a challenge, like a rival, a mark of balance. Once bitten, the bond must be settled, either through combat or something else." "What's the other option?" he asked. She leaned closer. "A bond of protection. Trust. Maybe more." Jace didn't step back. "And what do you choose?" Kazira was about to answer when a red flash lit the sky. A drone flew overhead, followed by 3 more. Jace immediately raised his blaster. "Alliance or Zarnak?" Kazira's face hardened. "Neither." One of the drones fired a sonic pulse. The ground trembled. Kazira shoved Jace aside as a tree exploded into splinters. "We're under attack." They dashed back into the ruins, but it was no longer safe. More drones came, circling, scanning, firing low blasts of plasma at the walls. Jace dove behind a pillar. "Who are they?" Kazira growled, eyes glowing. "Rogue commanders. Probably someone from the Zarnak side who doesn't like what happened between us." "You mean the bite?" "No," she shouted over the blasts. "I mean the respect." A wall collapsed. Jace rolled to safety. Kazira leapt into the air, landing on one of the drones with a feral scream, slicing it in half with her claws. "You want us separated," she yelled at the jungle. "They don't just want that," Jace said, standing beside her, eyes burning. "They want us dead." Together, they charged. Human tech. Zarnak rage. Jace blasted the drone's wings while Kazira ripped its heart out. One by one, the attackers fell. Smoke filled the air. Fire danced on the trees. When the last drone crashed, silence returned. They stood alone in the middle of the destruction. Jace was bleeding from a cut across his temple. Kazira had a burn on her arm, but both stood tall. Neither looked away. "You didn't have to fight like that," she said quietly. "I didn't fight for you," Jace replied. "I fought with you." Kazira blinked. Her eyes shimmered. "I was told humans were soft," she whispered. "Now I see. You're just deep, like calm water with fire beneath." She stepped forward slowly, as if unsure for the first time in her life. Then she reached out gently and touched his chest. "You marked me, but now I accept it." Jace didn't stop her. Their bond had changed. This was no longer a mission. This was war, and they were now each other's only ally. Command's intervention. The fire still burned in the jungle behind them. Trees smoked. Drones lay in pieces. But the real threat had just begun. From the sky, a beam of golden light split through the clouds. A ship, not just any ship, a Zarnak war-class transport, 10 times larger than standard patrols. Its black armor gleamed, and its symbol, 3 burning stars, marked it as the vessel of the High Command Council. Kazira's face turned cold. "They're here," she whispered, "and they're not pleased." The ship landed in silence. No wind, no sound, just a quiet pressure in the air, like gravity had increased. From its open ramp, 10 armored warriors marched out, all wearing ceremonial red, and behind them walked Overlord Vectan, Kazira's blood uncle and supreme, commander of the Zarnak military. He had no helmet. His face was ancient, cruel, and full of scars. His eyes locked on Jace. Kazira stepped forward. "Uncle, slap!" He struck her across the face. Jace's hand twitched toward his weapon. Kazira didn't fall. She didn't even flinch. She simply lowered her eyes, as was expected by tradition. "You shamed your bloodline," Vectan said, voice sharp like ice. "You let a human mark you." Jace stepped between them. "She didn't let me. I did it on my own." The guards raised their weapons. Kazira pushed Jace back with one arm. "No," but it was too late. Vectan snarled, "You dare speak to me, animal?" Jace looked directly into his eyes. "You sent drones to kill us. That wasn't a training test. That was an assassination attempt." Vectan didn't deny it. Instead, he smiled coldly. "You survived. That was your test." Kazira's voice broke the silence. "This is not the way. The old ways are poison. We were told this was an alliance test, not blood sport." "You speak like one of them now," her uncle hissed. "I speak like someone who fought beside a human, who bled with him, who—" "Enough," he roared. He turned to the guards. "Bind the human. He will be sent to the lower cells for questioning. Let's see if he still has teeth after 3 days with the interrogators." The guards stepped forward. Kazira moved to stop them, but Vectan raised a finger. "If you move, niece, you are no longer Zarnak. You will be exiled, forgotten, stripped of rank, name, and honor." The jungle went quiet. Kazira stood frozen, her claws curled, her breath shook, but she didn't move. The guards reached for Jace, and that's when Jace did the unthinkable, dropped his weapon and stepped toward the guards on his own. Kazira gasped. "What are you doing?" Jace didn't look back. "I'm buying you time." "For what?" he whispered over his shoulder. "To decide who you really are." The guards grabbed his arms, locking him in plasma cuffs. Vectan grinned. "The animal learns respect." Jace didn't flinch. "You're afraid of me?" Vectan narrowed his eyes. "Why would I fear a human?" "Because she chose to fight with me. Because you didn't control her." That hit something deep. The old warrior scowled and turned away. The guards pulled Jace toward the ship. Kazira stood still for a long moment. Then, she removed her armor. Piece by piece, she dropped it to the ground. Chestplate, gauntlets, the noble crest from her shoulder, and finally, her bloodline pendant. All fell. Everyone gasped. Even Vectan froze. She looked up. I accept exile, she said firmly, because I will not kneel to lies. Then she ran, straight toward the guards. Jace shouted, "Don't!" But she was faster than any of them. With no armor and no weapons, she moved like a shadow with fire in her heart. She flipped one guard, elbowed another in the throat, and caught Jace as he stumbled from their grip. "Run!" she shouted. They ran into the jungle. Together, behind them, sirens blared. Vecton screamed, "Hunt them!" Dozens of soldiers charged after them, but the jungle swallowed them both. They didn't stop running until the sky turned dark again. When they finally collapsed beside a waterfall, out of breath and wounded, Kazira looked at him with wild, furious eyes. "You gave yourself up for me." Jace smiled weakly. "I told you, I don't waste strength. I use it for what matters." She touched his hand, gently this time, and whispered, "Then from now on, I am yours." Trial of dominance. 3 days passed. Jace and Kazira hid deep in the southern jungle where no drones could scan and no patrols dared enter. This part of Zarnak 7 was different, darker, quieter, as if even the wild beasts respected its silence. Kazira sat near a black stone, her arms crossed, her expression hard to read. Jace sat across from her, bruised and tired. They had escaped death, but something still lingered between them, something unsaid. "What happens now?" Jace finally asked. Kazira didn't answer. He leaned closer. "You gave up everything, for me." Her eyes snapped to him. "No, I gave it up for truth." Jace tilted his head. "Is there a difference?" She stood and walked to the edge of the cliff where the moonlight hit the valley below. Far in the distance, they could see the glowing tower of the High Command's forward base. "I sent a message," she said. Jace stood. "To who?" "To the Zarnak Council. I invoked the right of binding combat." Jace frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means they can't kill you, unless I fail." He walked closer. "Fail what?" Kazira looked him in the eyes. "Must fight you." Jace froze. "What?" "It's the only way to settle the bite," she said. "Either I defeat you and reclaim my honor, or I submit, and you become my equal. Publicly." "Why now?" he asked quietly. "Because they're watching again. They've cleared an arena. They think they'll humiliate you in front of the galaxy." She stepped forward, her hand brushing his cheek. "But I know better now," Jace whispered. "And if I refuse?" "They'll kill us both," she replied. "This is the only way to rewrite the story." They were captured without a fight the next day. Kazira had made sure of it. As planned, the guards brought them to the open-air arena deep in the mountains. Alien nobles, soldiers, and galactic media watched from the skyboxes. Holograms floated above showing live feeds. In the center, stone floor, no weapons, no armor, just Jace and Kazira, facing each other. Overlord Vecton stood above them, voice booming. By Zarnak law, the challenge must end in dominance. One wins, one kneels. Jace looked around. No one believed he could win. To them, he was a small, soft-skinned human, but Kazira wasn't smiling. She looked like a storm barely holding back. Then the gong rang. She charged. Jace barely dodged her first strike. She was fast, like lightning, but he was steady. He rolled under her, kicked her legs out, and backed off. She flipped up like a dancer. He didn't attack. She rushed again, claws out. Jace blocked, twisted, and pinned her wrist. She growled, but he let her go. "Why aren't you fighting me?" she shouted. "Because I already did," Jace said, breathing hard. "I fought for you. I bled with you. This isn't a fight. This is theater." Kazira stood still, panting. "You must defeat me," she said, "or claim me, or I lose everything." Jace stepped close. "I don't want to dominate you," he said softly. "I want to stand beside you." Gasps came from the crowd. Vecton leaned forward. "You're making me look weak," Kazira whispered. "No," he replied. "I'm making you look free." She stared at him for a long moment. Her tail stopped moving. Her claws slowly curled back. And then she dropped to one knee, not in shame, not in defeat, but in choice. "I kneel not to submit," she said loudly, facing the crowd. "I kneel to show that strength is not just power, it is honor, and this human has more of it than all of you." Silence, then murmurs, then rising voices. Half the crowd stood, some in rage, some in shock, some in respect. Vectan's face twisted in fury. "This means nothing," he shouted. "This is not tradition." Kazira rose. "Then tradition is broken." She walked over to Jace and held out her hand. He took it. They turned together, side by side. And for the first time in Zarnak history, a human and an alien warrior stood as equals before the galaxy. New bond, the arena was no longer loud. After Kazira's words, silence had settled like fog. The galaxy had just seen something it never expected. A Zarnak noble kneeling before a human. By choice. And now, side by side, Jace and Kazira walked through the shattered tradition like two warriors returning from battle. Every camera followed them. Every eye stayed fixed. Behind them, Overlord Vectan stood frozen with fury. He could not punish her. Not now. The moment was too powerful. The message too loud. Jace whispered, "What happens now?" Kazira didn't answer. Not yet. Hours later, they stood in front of the Galactic Alliance Council. Representatives of many species were gathered, including humans, Zarnak, Jiten, Ilari, and more. The story of the bite, the battle, the arena had spread like wildfire. But instead of punishment, something else was offered, an opportunity. "The galaxy is changing," said an old Ilari ambassador. "Old rules will break, but something new must rise in its place." The human general nodded. These two faced death together. They proved what unity looks like, even in blood. Kazira looked at Jace. Jace looked at her. Neither spoke. Their eyes said enough. 1 month later, a new program launched across the stars. It was called the Honor Pairing Initiative, a bond-based team program that allowed one human and one Zarnak to serve together as equals. Not masters, not rivals, but balanced warriors, partners. At its center, Jace and Kazira. They were no longer soldiers. They were symbols. They toured war zones, helped mediate ancient conflicts, and trained new recruits. Together, across 100 systems, stories spread of the human who bit a noble, and the noble who knelt for peace. But for Jace and Kazira, their bond had gone beyond politics. Late one night, after a peace mission on the moon of Coral 6, they sat alone under a glowing red sky. The stars blinked like slow fireflies. Kazira sat quietly, her head tilted back watching the sky. Jace sat beside her, calm but deep in thought. "You never asked why I really knelt," she said suddenly. "I didn't need to," he replied. She turned. "But you should know." He looked at her. "I didn't kneel to make peace, or for strategy. I knelt," she said softly, "because for the first time, I felt free." Jace didn't speak, she continued. "My whole life I was trained to crush weakness. I was told humans were beneath us, but then you bit me, not to control me, but to stop me, to protect your line, to stand your ground." Jace smiled slightly. It was a small bite. She laughed. It was a giant message. They sat in silence for a while, then she reached out, gently taking his hand. "You showed me that strength isn't just power, it's choice, mercy, loyalty. And you showed me," Jace replied, "that warriors can still have honor, even if their claws are sharp." They stayed that way, hand in hand, until the stars faded into sunrise. Years later, a statue was built in the center of the United Systems capital. It showed two figures. One, an armored alien warrior, proud and tall. The other, a human soldier, steady and calm. They stood not with weapons drawn, but with hands joined. The plaque below read, "When the bite was given, tradition cracked. When the hand was taken, the galaxy changed."